You mean on the YouTube?
I mean on YouTube. Yeah, I just pressed it. All right, we are live. What's up, everybody? Thanks for anyone who wanted to join live. I guess patrons live, potentially not patrons afterwards. I don't even know why. I don't know. We did that. Anyway, this isn't Brian. It's Victor. How's it going, man?
Going great. How you doing?
I try not to bring like too much energy to the YouTube start because then I feel like I would have to eclipse it for the actual podcast start.
I hear you. I know Jesse always scares me when he starts because he always yells.
Yeah, Jesse's got such a good voice for radio.
Yeah,
but Jesse broke my heart. He said he's quitting the cupful. He said he has too many leagues, and I was like, bro, if you have too many leagues, you quit another league.
I know. He told me that too. I was like, oh well, yeah.
He was in tier 1 for a bit. Like I guess maybe he's feels like he's gotten as far as he'll get.
He like hit the pinnacle, right?
He said he's quitting the cupful.
Sorry, I just clicked on that link.
He didn't win though, so he hasn't fully.
I mean, how many people have won though? Like 5?
I think 7 now. But it's hard. I went from winning to having like the most terrible season. So
really, I hadn't heard that.
Yeah, you're lying. Okay, well, I can't help it. I just talk about the same things over and over again. I'll try not to. Okay, how about this? On this podcast, I'm not even going to mention our Dynasty League at all.
Oh, come on. It wouldn't be a show without it. We have to mention that we're co-GM.
Okay.
Now.
So far, sorry. I won't mention that I won. Like, I won't mention the basic things I always mention. When it's a fresh new season, the past doesn't matter.
Yeah. But well, now, last time I was on, we talked about how, my team's going to be competitive.
Well, yeah.
And we're going to go against each other. But now we join forces too. So that's fun.
That league hasn't even started. Like every day I check, I'm like, oh, I guess we're not playing yet.
I know. I'm so glad you're there because all these ads, I'm just like, oh yeah, that's a really good idea. I didn't have time to think about that.
Yeah. Anyway, all right. So I guess we might as well. No one even knows what we're. All right. Do Morbus here in the chat. Thanks. Yeah. Got a haircut. Wanted to look good for the show. Got Victor on. So I want him to be impressed with me. All right. Let's do this.
All right.
Yes! Welcome everybody to another episode of Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast, the longest running fantasy hockey podcast in the world, hosted by a guy who, believe it or not, has correctly won a bet for the Calder trophy for the past 2 seasons. I won some money off Cider, I won some money off Beniers, and I'm hoping Victor's going to help win me some money this year. But obviously it's not about the money, it's about fantasy, it's about the glory. And with me today, I guess I already dropped his name, but yeah, it's not Brian. Brian is going to be back with me on Tuesday for our next special guest episode. But in the meantime, I've got an annual tradition here from the Fantasy Hockey Life podcast, the Dauber Prospects Report. He's even got another announcement of other This guy does a lot of stuff, okay? But I'll let him tell you about it. He's been on Keeping Karlsson a bunch of times. Welcome back, Victor Nuno.
Awesome to be here, Elon. Thanks so much for that intro. And I don't think I got my cut of your Calder bet wins yet. So I'm assuming that's in the mail.
Well, I don't know. You didn't chip in for the bet, so I don't know how that works. This year's going to be a hard one though, because I feel like I don't want to bet on the favorite. By the way, just to make it clear to people, like I'm not a big gambler, not whatever, like to each their own, but like I just like every year to make a Calder bet. I don't know, it's fun, especially because I do this show with Victor, where like the plan for people who haven't listened to this show for the last few years is Victor has found the odds, the gambling odds for the Calder trophy. We're going to go through the list, and he's going to give his thoughts on what are the value bets and who are not the value bets. But of course, in the context of you could just be playing fantasy hockey, and obviously anyone who has a chance to win the Calder is also someone you probably want to draft for your fantasy leagues. But yeah, that's the scope we look at it in terms of the odds. While we're talking about it, I'm always like, well, I got to pick one of these and throw something down. And Beniers was like 5.5 to 1 when we talked last year. And I felt like that was he seemed like the odds-on favorite to me because he was the guy who was going to come in and be like a top-line center on his team and had some experience versus who were the guys who were ahead of him? I feel like McTavish maybe, Owen Power. There were a couple of guys who had lower odds than Beniers, but I don't know. To me, that was an easy one. This year, obviously, we can just put money on Bedard, but it's bet 50 to win 30. I don't know. It's just not as fun, I guess.
Yeah, that's boring. And I definitely, just in case anyone was wondering, I definitely did have Beniers 1, but not a lot of people did. There were definitely some Owen Powers in there. There was a bunch of guys that weren't even going to play, which I found strange as higher up on the list. But yeah, it's it's a little bit tougher this year, I think.
Yeah, well, in one way you could say it's easier because I'm sure that it's going to be Bedard, but there's always the possibility that it won't be. And in that case, we'll talk about the other options that are going to be there because it's like even without Bedard, it's like a star-studded list of rookies this year. Like it seems like there's so many great players compared to last year where it was kind of like, yeah, it's fine. You know, it wasn't the most exciting group of rookies, but yeah, I'm really stoked to go through all these guys and get your takes. I guess before we get into everything, a couple quick things. First of all, well, on Victor's side, like I mentioned, he has a lot of great podcasts. He's been doing a whole series all throughout the summer, interviewing beat writers from every team. I used to do that, Victor. It's a lot of work. I'm glad you took over, so I didn't have to.
I know. Actually, I didn't know that you guys were going to stop doing that, but yeah, we've kind of started doing it. And for those of you who haven't listened, I mean, I loved what you guys did. It was great, but we kind of wanted to do that and incorporate obviously more of a dynasty angle. So we talk about prospects, and we've been having Mason Black, the Rank King, do comparisons that he tweets out. We include that in the show, and then we get a goalie prospect expert, Kat Silverman. So we got like a bunch of different parts to the show, including the beat writer interview. So yeah, it's a lot to put together, but it's also a lot of fun, and hopefully people enjoy it.
Yeah, I liked doing it. I probably would have done it this summer if someone else could have like wrangled the interviews for me. That was the part that's always the hardest. Like I like actually sitting down and talking to these smart people and like prepping and whatever, but it's just like the messaging back and forth. But anyways, I've really been enjoying it. So yeah, I definitely think everyone should check it out. That's on the Fantasy Hockey Live feed. I'll mention for ourselves, for Keeping Karlsson, the Keeping Karlsson Ultimate Patron Fantasy League, the Cupful, which Victor is a participant in and has a storied history in there. Yeah, we are getting started. Like Kevin is going to be creating the divisions tomorrow. Like people are going to be getting their invites. It's very exciting. But if you didn't sign up for the Keeping Karlsson Ultimate Patron Fantasy League, you still can join the wait list. And we every season we usually fill like 3 or 4 leagues like after the registration deadline passed. So if you still want to play, like you still can. So just check out kakupful.com or keepingkarlsson.com/patron is one of the perks of being a patron, along with some other things, including joining the Discord, which is where I met Victor a long time ago, back when it wasn't Discord, back when it was a Facebook group. So yeah, anyways, that's a little self-plug there. But I guess with that, one last thing, if you don't mind, Keeping Karlsson proudly presented by DauberHockey.com. And we had Dauber on the last episode, Dauber himself. A lot of people were like, I never heard this guy talk before. Like, this is so cool to hear him. And it was a really fun show. So thanks again to Daryl Dobbs, aka Dauber, for coming on. If you didn't hear that one, go check it out. And also Brian and I have been doing some tiering. We tiered goalies, we tiered defensemen. So yeah, check out all those old shows along with there's a lot of content out there for you with Fantasy Hockey Live, Dauber Prospects Report, our Keeping Karlsson episodes, but we're just going to keep going with some good content. And this is what I've been looking forward to for a while now. So Victor, why don't you like set the table here? Let us know kind of what's the plan for today.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for all that. And thanks for all the great stuff you guys are doing. Definitely a longtime patron of Keeping Karlsson. And yeah, so the plan for today, what we've kind of done the last couple of years, and I think it makes sense, is you kind of look at the odds, who the odds on favorites are. And this year is a little bit different because there's a clear favorite. It's obviously Connor Bedard. Everyone is picking him. And it's kind of unusual because very often the Calder winner is not a 18-year-old rookie. It's usually someone who's a bit older, 19, 20, even 21. Obviously, we've had some older winners too, but it's usually a bit older. And that may or may not be the case this year. We actually have an 18-year-old that has a chance. So we're going to talk about the odds. We're going to go through what the odds makers think and kind of talk about those players and then kind of compare them to my list, because I made my own rank, my own list of who I think the favorites are and who has the best chance. And obviously these guys are also relevant in redraft leagues and keeper leagues, so we can talk about them. They will have some relevance. And I think this year more than some others, actually, some of these guys could be pretty valuable in certain redraft and keeper formats, right, Elon?
Yeah, I mean, we've been doing mock drafts, preparing for the couple on our Discord, and like a lot of the guys in this conversation have been being taken. Like, there's a lot of players. Like, I guess as we go through them, I'll let you know. But yeah, there's a lot of players that could have like significant roles on their team, and a lot of times, like you look at last year, like Owen Power, obviously a high pedigree guy, was finally started, first overall pick, right? But like we knew he was going to be behind Dali, and like what was the upside really for fantasy? Like even like Jake Sanderson on the Sens, who just earned himself a huge contract after that rookie season. But it's like there weren't guys that like we thought were like for sure, but like we have like not only Bedard, we have people who potentially could be in line to be their team's like starting goalie, like top power play. So obviously we'll go through it as we go, but that makes things very interesting. It's interesting how you said that it's been a lot, it's pretty rare that an 18-year-old wins the Calder. I'm just looking through the list right now. In 1981-82, Dale Hawerchuk won it as an 18-year-old. In 83-84, Tom Barrasso won the Calder. Do you know Tom Barrasso won the Calder and the Vezina in his first season?
Wild.
You know, there's a goalie this year that I wonder if they could pull a Tom Barrasso. We'll see. We'll get to it. But yeah, since 83-84, there's only been one 18-year-old in like 40 years that's won the Calder. Do you want to? Do you know who it is, Victor?
I know who it is because I've been researching this, and it's Nathan McKinnon.
Yeah. So we'll see if
But
Bedard.
I bet a lot of people. I bet a lot of people didn't know that, and there are definitely some really good names that were really good in their 18-year-old season that did not win the Calder, right?
Yeah, and also like sometimes it's just luck. Like Austin Matthews played his first year after being drafted. It's just he happened to be 19 by the time whatever the award he was awarded it. But yeah, anyway, so we'll see what happens. But yeah, should we get it out of the way? Should we just talk about Bedard first before we move on to the rest of the players?
Yeah. Oh, well, there was one more thing we were going to announce right off the bat.
Oh, please, yeah, of course, take it away.
Well, yeah, and you talked about all the things that I've been doing. I'm very grateful that our good buddy Cam Robinson reached out to me and asked me to join the EP Ringside team. So I'm very excited that I'll be with Cam Robinson and Mike Clifford, who I know you've had on the show. So we're going to be doing the fantasy arm of EP Ringside, and those guys are just the best in terms of all their draft content. And so I'm really excited to be writing some more articles, doing that. So it's going to be a good time. So that was the big announcement that came out recently.
No, that's really awesome. And like, I'm really happy because like we discussed last time you were on, you and I are joining forces, being co-managers in a dynasty league. So the fact that you're now working with those other smart people on this awesome site means I'm going to get a lot of inside info on some process. But you have a ton of podcasts, so I'm sure people will get it from you as well directly. So yeah, that's awesome news, and they're lucky to have you. And yeah, what a team, you and Cam. I didn't even know Michael Clifford was over there. He's great. I think we've got him booked. I don't know if it's
yeah. He's not leaving Dauber. If people are wondering, he's not leaving Dauber. He's still going to do that.
Oh, okay. Wow. So he's like you, like busy, million jobs. Yeah, I think it's okay to say this. I don't know. I'll ask Brian after and cut it out if not. But like, I think we have Michael Clifford booked to join us for our tier 1 auction draft episode coming up.
Oh, he's done that a few years, and that's always a super fun listen for sure.
Yeah, he's great. This is the first year ever that neither Brian or I are in tier 1 of the cupful. So we could both be eligible to host this show along with Clifford.
Nice.
Do you think it's okay if I call him Clifford? Clifford's kind of like a first name and a last name, so I guess you can.
Well, it goes by Slim Cliffy on Twitter. That's always fun too.
All right. Well, I think we've delayed enough though. There's one Connor Bedard that we've talked about like a ton on the podcast. I just talked about him with Dauber. He projected him for 91 points. I feel like if Bedard hits that 91 points, he's probably gonna win this award. So do you concur with Dauber that he's gonna have a season like this?
I don't. And I mean, far be it from me to disagree with Dauber, but I hear where he's coming from, and you look at the comparisons, you look at the equivalencies for Bedard, and it is McDavid and Matthews and Jack Hughes and Mario Lemieux, and it's like ridiculous. And I definitely think he has that upside. I also think that McDavid had more to work with in his rookie season. There's some other definite differences with McDavid and Bedard, and that is that McDavid is a phenomenal skater and Bedard is not. I think Bedard's shot is probably better, but just in terms of how he can generate the offense, I think there's some differences there. And it's just going to be some tough sledding there in Chicago, right? I'm just not sure that they're going to be able to produce a 90-point player. Like, I think he has all the talent in the world, but is the environment good enough? So I don't know. I also worry a little bit about Bedard because he is a bit smaller. Connor McDavid is 6'1", Bedard is 5'9", 5'10", and he's pretty slight, and he might get pushed around. I knock on wood. I hope he doesn't get injured, but that is a small concern. You're making a huge leap from the WHL to the NHL. And, if he misses 10, 20, 30 games, that could derail his chances, right? So I don't know. I think he's going to be amazing. I don't think he's worth where he's going in your cupful drafts, Elon. I was looking at this earlier, and I don't know, man. It's really kind of crazy to me that you're looking at, he's basically going around 40 to 50 in the mock drafts, from what I saw, if that's still correct. And there's some pretty good names that are going right around that range, right?
Yeah, I'm taking a look right now. We have obviously Kevin Hebert, the cupful coordinator, the creator of all the amazing spreadsheets and tools. Yeah, he's put together this mock draft ADP. Can you believe we're already on our 60th mock draft? right now. It's
Wow.
getting pretty nuts. Twice a day I have to like make these mock drafts. But Bedard, I'm looking here, on average has been going around 50th. And after him, well, Shesterkin and Vasilevsky. But to compare apples and oranges, then like Evander Kane, Dylan Larkin, Kyrou, Marchand, Johnny Gaudreau, Konechny. So all these players are going after Bedard on average. So yeah, like I mean, obviously someone like a Larkin seems like a really sure thing, right? Especially now with DeBrincat on his wing. It would be hard for me to take Bedard over Larkin. Like we're talking 1 year leagues, right? Not keeper leagues.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I'm wimpy. Like I did come 13th out of 14th last year. So I am wondering if I need to change my strategy. That was an auction draft. So I feel like,
Not the same.
it's not the same. I think maybe I just like misread that a little bit in hindsight. But yeah, I don't think I'd have the guts to take Bedard that high. Like, maybe when people are starting to take like a Carter Verhaeghe, maybe like a Cole Caulfield, that's when I'm gonna consider him. But yeah, it's hard because like you say, like the big thing is the Chicago, right? Like it's just like, can they produce like a 90-point player? It's hard to imagine, but also I don't know, you're the prospect guy. Like everyone I hear just talks about how Bedard is just like it. Like he's like the next McDavid, and they've been saying it for a while. So anyway, I think at these odds, -140. I'll just explain quickly what these odds mean. Like -140 means like if you bet $100. No, it means you have to bet 140. Okay, so -140 means you have to bet $140 to win $100. So you can then put out that ratio for however much you want to bet, right? But like you put down a $140 bet, so you don't even get back how much you bet. So he's like not someone that you're going to make a lot of money off of unless you like really do it. So yeah, it's kind of interesting here to talk about like all the other players and just kind of, I guess if you make a bet on someone else, you're kind of hoping that Bedard like struggles or something because he's obviously the odds-on favorite. But yeah, the interesting thing is if you like any of these other players now, like you get really great odds because everyone assumes that Bedard is like going to run away with it. So it's pretty much you're guaranteed like almost 10-1 odds for anyone else at the minimum.
Yeah, the next one is +550. So you want to just contrast that in terms of how much you have to pay or how much you can win from +550.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Yeah. So +550 would mean if you bet 100, you win 550. So it's like 5.5 to 1 odds. So yeah, that's the comparison. That's the last we can talk about like the specific like numbers, but just imagine like the higher the plus number, the more you win on a $50 bet or whatever.
That's a huge range for sure.
Yeah. So okay. So do you want to go now? Is the plan we're just going to go down the list of the lowest to highest odds? And you just pulled it from somewhere. I have different odds on the app that I've been looking at. I guess we're not going to be like promoting different gambling apps. But yeah, so the odds obviously vary, but you've got a list of odds and we'll just kind of go through and you'll give your thoughts on which of these players are good value. So who's next according to the odds makers in the list you have?
So the next at +550 is Luke Hughes, which is a bit odd to me. He's not next on my list, and that's a huge jump as we're saying. So definitely not like a good money bet in terms to take Bedard, but definitely decent money beyond that. I think they have a good chance. And Luke Hughes is amazing. Like he was awesome for the US at the World Championships. He's been awesome at Michigan in college. And yeah, he is Jack Hughes' younger brother. He's also Quinn Hughes' younger brother, in case people are wondering. He absolutely is. And he's really young for his draft year too. Like he basically is like regressed a whole year and he's phenomenal. His equivalencies look like Dougie Hamilton actually is one guy that he looks almost exactly like in the hockey prospecting model and definitely has that kind of upside. I think it's funny that he looks like his teammate in this model, but he definitely, I don't know that he'll be as good at bash as Hamilton, but he has maybe even more scoring upside. And I think the fact that he's NHL ready was eased the fact that they wanted to let Damon Severson go because that kind of opens up a spot for him. And he played a little bit at the end of last season and in the playoffs, and he seems like he's pretty good to go. So I like that, but I just don't know that this is the best bet because I don't think there's any way Luke Hughes is taking Dougie Hamilton's spot on the power play because Dougie's been doing it for so long. So they'll probably ease him in like third pairing minutes, maybe some offensive zone starts, like let him do some of the offense, but give him a responsible partner and let him, don't put too much on his shoulders. And I think that's going to make it hard for him to win the Calder when he's not given that much responsibility. So I think he's great. I think in dynasty, keeper leagues, Luke Hughes is amazing, but I don't really like this Calder bet too much for him, actually.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Like, last year, Beniers was so appealing because he was going to be like a top power play, top line guy. And like the year before, Sider, we didn't expect him to be on the top power play, but he quickly took it on Detroit. And like that was big. So it's been a while. Like I'm looking at like Aaron Ekblad. He won the Calder in 2014-15. And he was also on the top power play. Actually, I'm saying, I guess he ended up losing the top power play at some point to Yandel for a few years. And now recently he's lost it to Montour. But yeah, I don't think there has been a defenseman that's won the Calder that's not on the top power play. I don't know, maybe ever. I don't want to keep scrolling here, but yeah, it's not a common thing. So I don't know, was Tyler Myers, who was the Buffalo, who even knows what's going on with
I think it was actually Barrett Jackman way back in 0203.
Oh, wow. Who was he competing against?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't remember all the candidates that year, but he didn't even score that many points. He just he played a lot of minutes and he's really tough and physical. And I don't think there were too many other good candidates that year.
Yeah, okay, I'll look it up while you're talking about the next guy. But I agree with you. Luke Hughes is not someone. I mean, I'll take him late in the couple if he's available, but I could see him just being like. You think maybe like a good comp could be Owen Power last year? Like Luke Hughes will produce similar to him.
Luke Hughes is a better offensive defenseman than Owen Power, but he's probably not going to play as many even strength minutes as Owen Power did, even in his rookie or D+1 season. So I think eventually Luke Hughes is exactly who you want in fantasy because he's going to have all the power play time. But this year, I think he might even have a worse, season than Power did in terms of point production.
Wow. Okay. So yeah. So maybe Luke Hughes isn't the most exciting. The odds makers probably have this wrong, but we'll wait and see. I've seen here Barrett Jackman had the most votes, and second most votes was Henrik Zetterberg. But Zetterberg only had 44 points on the year, so it's not as if it was prime Henrik Zetterberg. So yeah, I feel like those days are long gone. That a guy who gets 19 points is going to win the Calder. But that's not going to happen this year. That's for sure. All right, who do you want to talk about next?
Yeah, so the next couple guys both have plus 1,000 to win, and that is Logan Cooley and Adam Fantilli. And we can kind of talk about them similarly if you want. But obviously, Cooley was drafted a couple years ago, and in a redraft probably goes number one. That was the year that Slavkovsky went, and then we had Nemeth and we had Wright, and Cooley was there to Arizona, and he just had an absolutely historic second season at the University of Minnesota, 60 points in 39 games. He was ridiculous. 2 points per game at the World Juniors. The guy is having a phenomenal D+1 year, and looks like he was gonna go back to college, and then he decommitted and he signed his entry level, so he will be in Arizona. And it's quite possible he's their top line center, as early as a month or two in, if not earlier, playing between Keller and Schmaltz. I mean, he's really good. And the reason I really like this is because not only is he really good, he's a year older. Like we were talking about, it's kind of hard for 18-year-olds to win. So he's 19, he'll be 20 in May. He's a little bit more physically mature, and playing in college was helpful for that year. So I think he's got a little bit more, he's a little bit farther down the funnel. I think he'll fit in a little bit better with and be able to compete. And he's going to have a really prominent role. And I think this could really help him in the Calder voting because unlike Fantilli, who is going to Columbus, and I mean, he's awesome. He also had a really great draft season in college, but there's a lot of good forwards in Columbus, right? So Fantilli is not going to be the focal point, not like Cooley will either, but he'll be one of the main few, right? Whereas Fantilli will be one of, I don't know, 6 or 7 top forwards there. And so it just might be a little bit harder for him to stand out.
Yeah, I mean, both of them are definitely interesting because they're on teams that like are kind of shallow at center. So like, I wouldn't be shocked to see Fantilli. I think going into the season, the plan is Jenner centering Gaudreau and Laine, you would think, but obviously who knows, we have a new coach there. But it wouldn't be so shocking to see Fantilli at some point. Also, Boone Jenner gets injured all the time. So like Fantilli could get a prominent role, but yeah, Logan Cooley also, like I guess Barrett Hayton was the guy who was having a lot of success with Schmaltz and Keller at the end of last year, but that obviously doesn't mean that things can't change. And you know what? Arizona's not as shallow as they used to be. So, even not playing with Schmaltz and Keller could still be a good role for Cooley if he's on the top power play and playing with like Michelli, who's a really good setup man, and whatever, Genther or Zucker. There's people for Cooley to play with over there. So yeah, I think he and Fantilli are really interesting. But yeah, I think I'm with you that Cooley is a little bit more interesting just because they have less good players, right? So like you say, he could have a more prominent role, though I guess then you could make the argument for Fantilli that he gets to play potentially with Johnny Gaudreau and with Patrick Laine, which are maybe better. Is that better than at this point? Are we Gaudreau versus like a Clayton Keller? Are we maybe they're actually pretty close now that we talk about
Yeah,
it.
that's an interesting comparison. I think Keller's a better all around player, but in terms of fantasy asset, yeah, they're probably pretty similar, right?
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, those are both like interesting bets. I like them both better than Luke Hughes, like you said, just for the reason that they could have more prominent roles on their team. Maybe Cooley like more likely to get it. So I'm with you for that. And I'll yeah, so those are like similar to the Beniers bet from last year. Who do you have next?
Yeah, so I would definitely I should mention where I have these guys ranked. Sorry. So I do have Bedard first. I have someone else second, we'll get to later. And then I have Cooley third and Fantilli fourth on my list. So I do have Cooley just a bit ahead for the reasons that I mentioned in terms of having more opportunity. But yeah, those two are very reasonable bets at plus 1,000. Then we get into the first goalie. There are a lot of goalies actually to talk about. The first goalie is Devon Levi. He is plus 1,200. So, that's a pretty decent bet, I would say, in terms of return on potential investment. And,
And I'll throw it out there. The bet that I ended up making was, or sorry, I'll just interrupt. I'll just throw it out there for whatever it's worth. I saw him at plus 1,600 somewhere. So shop around. I don't know. But yeah, Levi's interesting. People know that I've been listening to the podcast. Brian definitely knows I've been annoying him about it. I'm pretty excited about it, Devon Levi. I tried to move him up our Schmore goalies board tiers last episode, and Brian wouldn't have it. But maybe after he listens to what you're about to say, maybe he'll change his mind.
Well, I kind of doubt I'm going to change Brian's mind, but we'll try. I definitely think that Levi is the best goalie on this list, and he has, maybe not the highest equivalency just in terms of like what his numbers look like in development, but more recently you can just see what he did. And he played a few games for the Sabres at the end of the season when their season was on the line, and they came up just like 1 or 2 points, I think, short of making the playoffs. And he was the guy in net that was trying to get them there, and he was awesome in those 7 games. He definitely wasn't the reason they didn't make it. He went 5-2 with a 905 save percentage. But when you look at the underlying numbers at even strength, he had quite literally the expected Fenwick save percentage you could possibly have in front of you. So basically the worst protection possible. And he outperformed that by a ridiculous margin. So Devon Levi took a really terrible situation and almost turned the Sabres into a playoff team. And this season, he has to compete with UPL and Eric Comrie, which I am not super worried about those guys. Eric Comrie in particular, UPL has had ups and downs. He's someone who I was excited about, but he's really struggled to be consistent. And I think that the Sabres have gotten better. I think that, Power, Dahlin are better. They have some other, good defensemen and forwards are matured. And I think that he's going to win the job. And my hot take was for the EP guide when Cam asked me for a take is that Devon Levi pushes the Sabres into the playoffs and wins the Calder. That's, if anyone's going to take it away from Bedard, which I think is, statistically unlikely just based on how good he is. But if anyone's going to do it, I think it's Levi, especially because I find it hard to believe that another forward is going to outpoint Bedard. But a goalie is a goalie. It's a different position, and it can be really valuable to the team, especially if they make the playoffs. And Bedard, I think we can all agree the Blackhawks are not making the playoffs. So if one of these players pushes their team into the playoffs, that's a pretty good case, right?
No, yeah, for sure. And I think it like speaks volumes. The fact that the Sabres have been adding guys like, your Eric Johnsons, like these like kind of depth players, like they're clearly going forward. They're no longer rebuilding. They think they can like take a shot at the playoffs this year. And they didn't go after any goalie, even though Comrie and UPL have been totally unreliable. And like, you can't go in, so that like, to me, that like signals that it's not like a competition. I think their plan, obviously it is a competition. Like Levi has to not stink in training camp, but I think that the plan is for Levi to be the starter. So I don't think it's as open of a competition as maybe you might think. That's just my gut feeling, but obviously we'll find out in just a few weeks. But yeah, so if he's going in as the starter, then all he has to do is play well. And yeah, like you say, like maybe the pieces could fall into place for the Sabres to have a good season. And yeah, that would make him very appealing. Yeah, he's the guy that I'm placing my bet on this year. Levi. Got him
Yeah.
at 16-1. And hopefully I'll come in next year's episode and talk about how I got 3 in a row. But this is obviously the one I'm least confident in because obviously, yeah, Bedard is a bit of an obstacle. But McDavid didn't win the Calder in his year. He did get injured though. I don't want to say I'm wishing Bedard to get injured, but
Well, that's all it takes, right?
Yeah.
A little slash on the wrist, and then you miss, a few weeks, and then someone kind of slightly outperforms you. So I don't think it's terribly unreasonable. And I have Devin Levi second on my list. I didn't push him ahead of Bedard just because I think if everyone's healthy, which is kind of what you have to assume, then Bedard is the favorite. But Levi has a really good chance, I think.
All right. So I feel like those are like the top 5 that jump out to me as like the clear people, and those are your top 5. I guess those are the top 5 but the odds makers and your top 5. So it'll be fun to see now if you start to differ a little bit from the odds makers in terms of who you have as number 6. So yeah, let's get into it. I guess you're going with the order of the odds makers right now, right?
Yeah.
And then I guess you'll drop in when we get to your number 6 at some point.
Yeah. So the odds have 4 guys in the next tier at plus 2,500, which is a huge jump because Levi was 1,200. Although, as you said, you can find him a little bit worse odds than that, perhaps. But at plus 2,500, you have David Jiricek of the Blue Jackets, Simon Nemec of the Devils, Brant Clark of the Kings, all 3 defensemen, and then a forward, Matthew Knies. And I mean, for me, Knies is the clear favorite here, just because. Well, he's a forward. He doesn't have, he's older and is not as much for him to get past in terms of like, as much defensive responsibility, but he was part of that line with Cooley that had an amazing college season. And he was pretty fantastic for Minnesota. So, he's a little bit more developed. He's a Maple Leaf prospect for those who don't remember. 57th overall is when he was drafted in 2021. And yeah, 42 points in 40 games for University of Minnesota. It was him, Snuggerud, and Logan Cooley was the line, and they just terrorized the NCAA. And I think the biggest thing for Knies, though, is that he looks like he's got a second line role for the Maple Leafs. They moved out some players, they moved some in, but they seem like bottom 6 pieces. So it's good. It might be Knies with Tavares and Nylander, and what an opportunity, right? It's probably between him and Nick Robertson or maybe some other players, but it sure seems like Knies has the inside track. He was there in the playoffs. He looked really good in the playoffs till he got injured. And, he's basically looks like he's going to, have a really strong opportunity. So that's why I like him the best. And I can comment on this defenseman, but you have a take on Knies?
Yeah, well, I think it's interesting. Like Toronto, like I think they do have like 6 players that feel top 6 worthy without Knies. And like obviously there's Matthews, Marner, Nylander, Tavares, and then they've brought in Bertuzzi and Max Domi. So I could see a situation where like those 6 make up the top 6. But at the same time, Domi is a center and they lost Kerfoot. So maybe it's just like Domi goes and becomes a 3rd line center, which does, open up that spot with Tavares and Nylander, assuming Bertuzzi's with Matthews and Marner. So yeah, there's obviously a lot of moving pieces. And again, we're going to learn more once we finally get into training camp. Very exciting that it's September and like this is going to actually start happening soon. But yeah, obviously that would be a huge opportunity. Like we saw Bunting get a Calder nom from being in the Leafs top 6. And Knies, I think, is like obviously a higher pedigree guy than Bunting. Anyways, obviously Bunting was a lot older. So yeah, that's definitely a fun bet. And if you're a Leafs fan, you're definitely hoping that he's gonna pan out and be worthy of consideration if you want the Leafs to have another good season.
Yeah, and I'll go ahead and say it. Knies is a better player than Bunting, so I'm definitely excited about that one. And then so we have 3 defensemen. We have Jiricek, Nemec, and Clark, and I think this is where it's interesting for me because I think Jiricek is the best of these 3, but I don't think he has the best chance of winning the Calder because Columbus loaded up on D. I don't know why they decided they needed Severson and Provorov, and they have Werenski, and they have some pretty other.
I mean, did you see what happened last season? I feel I would load up on D2 if I was them, and I just saw what happened with all those injuries.
They were down to like their 12th defenseman or something. But yeah, these guys with pretty big term too. So unfortunately, he's a little blocked, I would say, unfortunately, but he's just so good. Jiricek is, and so is he better than like Goodbranson, Peak, Boquist? I think so, but he also might not play that much just because those guys are there and they have a pretty strong, top four. So I think Juracek, he was great in the AHL last year. He's great for Bash. I think, I was talking with Scott Wheeler and he was saying that, and I kind of agree with him that Juracek might battle Zach Werenski one day for that top power play spot. It's not going to be this year. It probably won't be next year, but eventually, he could take that spot. So he's a really good player, and Nemec is a really good player too. He's in New Jersey, and New Jersey, they have Hughes right ahead of him, and they have, a lot of other good defensemen already in the NHL. So I'm not sure that there's much of an opportunity in any secondary offensive chances that are given to any New Jersey Devils blue liner is going to go to Luke Hughes. It's not going to go to Nemec. So I don't understand why he's even this high, frankly. I think he's much lower. And I also think that Nemec isn't really as offensive as some people think. There's been a lot of, I had him much lower in the draft year because I didn't think his offense was great. And a lot of people are kind of agreeing with that recently, that his activations lack purpose at times. He's an awesome skater, and I think he's going to be an effective defenseman, but I'm not sure he's going to demand power play time. So I'm a little lower on him, but Clark is the one that I think is someone we should be really excited about because LA is a good team. They moved out Dursey, and so there's kind of a spot for him. And obviously Doughty is still there, but Brant Clark is amazing, and he looked pretty good in his cup of coffee with LA, and then he looked good at the World Juniors, and then he went back to the OHL and just terrorized the OHL for his time that he was there, and 2 points per game in the playoffs and the regular season pretty much. And he looks like he's ready. He might get some AHL time, but I know when I talked with our beat writer, she said that Dillman, she said that it's gonna. She thinks that, or no, that wasn't Dillman. It was the mayor. All right.
Do you want to go back from just when we talked to our beat writer?
What am I saying? What was his name? Yeah. Hold on. Yeah, when we talked to Dennis Bernstein for our Los Angeles episode, he was saying that
actually,
he thinks...
do you mind saying it again? You actually just kind of had a bit of a glitch there. Yeah.
For Clark, when we talked with Dennis Bernstein on our LA Kings episode, he said that he thinks that Clark is going to be there the whole season, pretty much. And I don't know that he's going to surpass Doughty because it just seems like they give him the opportunity. But I think that Clark has a pretty decent chance to do some really special things with a really good team there in LA. So I like his chances certainly more than the other 2D, but I like him a little less than Nye. So I have Nyes as my 6th, then I have Juracek 8th, and then I have Nemec way down at 25th on my list.
Interesting. So it sounds like Clark probably won't win the Calder, but if maybe he could be someone like if you were in a league where Sean Dursey was rostered last season, then maybe Brant Clark could sort of take over at least his role on LA and have some fantasy value. So maybe someone to grab super late, because I don't even know if he's been taken at all in our couple mock drafts. Let me take a quick peek here. Brant Clark, he's only been taken in 9 of the draft. I'm not sure how up to date this sheet is in terms of maybe it's only like the first 40 or so, but yeah, he wasn't being taken in too many. So yeah, might be a fun late pick. But yeah, interesting. Okay, so we got your 6th. We don't have your 7th yet, though. So we still that's the next mystery, I guess. Is who's Victor going to have 7th?
Oh no, we did. Luke Hughes was already mentioned. I didn't mention him there, but yeah, Hughes is 7th. But we don't have the 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th. Yeah, we're missing some guys in here.
Okay, cool. All right. So who do you have next in the list?
So according to the odds that I pulled, we have a bunch of players at plus 3,000. We have Jacob Peltier, Luke Evangelista, Shane Wright, Leo Karlsson, all in that range. And I'll just say at the beginning, the one that confuses me the most is Leo Karlsson, because I don't think that he's going to play in the NHL this year. I guess it's still possible. Like he's going to come to camp, but it seems like they're not going to rush him. They're not in a hurry to, try to be really good right away. And so I'm pretty sure Leo Karlsson's going to go back to the SHL, but I guess it's possible he makes the team. And if he does, there's a reasonable chance, but I'm I'm not sure about that one. I think that there's a lot of other good players there, and so he might have like middle six minutes. I think his upside is a top line center, but I don't know that he's going to have that opportunity right now. And I think there's a decent chance that he plays his 9 games and goes back to Sweden. So I'm not sure that he's going to have the biggest opportunity to show what he can do.
Yeah, like even if he does like earn like an opportunity on the team based on like being better than like 12 other forwards or whatever, like, or better than, sorry, being better than the 12th best forward at camp or whatever, you know what I mean? But like I feel like the Ducks stink and they know it and they're not ready to contend yet. So why not? Like why burn a year of his ELC? I mean, I know there's obviously other considerations, and if he's like really good, then maybe the fans want to see him, and there's all of that. But yeah, doesn't make too much sense to rush Leo Karlsson if they can kind of wait until the rest of the team ages into a more of a contender a little bit. So yeah, I don't think he's someone I'd be interested in betting on. And obviously, even if he does make the team, though, I guess, hey, if he does, like, wouldn't it be a similar situation to like a Cooley or a Fantilli? Like obviously Anaheim has Trevor Zegras, but not too many other awesome. Well, I guess McTavish could be a center. So yeah, I'd be curious to see what Karlsson's role on the team would be if he made it, but probably not even worth discussing too much right now because you don't even think he's going to make the team.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's good enough to make the team, but I'm not sure it's the smartest move. So yeah, so I have him down in the 30s just because I think he's not because I think he's bad, but I just don't think he's as likely to play. And so you're not going to win if you play even 20 games, So yeah, he's a little bit lower. And then the other guys on that list. So I'm a little surprised too by Shane Wright, just because Wright, even if he does play, which I think is kind of unlikely, because unfortunately, still with the CHL AHL agreement, he is not eligible to play in the AHL this season, Shane Wright, and because his birthday is January 5th, so he would have to do the same thing as last year where he played like 9 games and they sat him out and gave him a conditioning assignment. So they'd have to monkey with his, deployment and time on ice again this year if they wanted to get him the certain number of games that they got him this season, which was only 8 in the NHL and 8 in the AHL. I don't think he's good enough really to make the team, or at least to be a significant contributor. I think they're so good. They're such a deep team, right? I mean, they got Tanev and Pierre-Edouard Bellemare on their fourth line. I mean, they're a really deep team at forward. So I find it hard to believe that Shane Wright is even going to play enough games, let alone have enough of an impact, because even their top forwards on Seattle, don't play that many minutes. They're playing like 17, 18 minutes, unlike other guys on other teams that are playing, 22 or whatever. So I don't think that he's going to be able to have the impact Shane Wright to do what he needs to do to win the Calder. So that's the main reason that I have him down at 22.
Yeah, I wonder if it comes down to like Kyler Yamamoto versus Shane Wright, maybe, to make the team. That could be a fun competition. I don't know how locked in Yamamoto is at this point, but you'd think, yeah, why rush Shane Wright? And like you said, Kraken are so deep and they were so good last year without him. So yeah, it's kind of a disappointment though that he's like so far down the list. Like Cooley, I remember at the time when Cooley was taken ahead of Shane Wright, a lot of people were like, what? Like, what's going on? Why is Wright continuing to fall? And now it's like I don't know, you said that Cooley's generally getting taken first when people are doing redrafts of that draft. Like, where's Wright generally going? Like, is he even top 10 still to people?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he still has a lot of upside. It's just unfortunate because, Cooley went to the NCAA and just was able to thrive. I think if Wright was in the NCAA, he would do, maybe not the same, but he'd do pretty well. But he can't. And to Shane Wright's credit, when he did go back to the OHL, he was awesome. Like 37 points in 20 games. Like he was really good. On the Dobber Prospects Report, we had an actual Seattle Kraken scout on our podcast, and he was talking about what he saw from Wright and how great it was at every different level. Like he was showing progression and he was showing leadership and all the right things. So I don't think it's necessarily a negative on Wright. I just think the team situation is not conducive to him winning the Calder in Seattle. It's just not. Like they're not going to give him the opportunity.
Right. Okay. So not the Calder, and also probably not even worth drafting in fantasy because he, like you said, like might not make the team. I'm
Not in
curious if there'll be
redraft.
anyone. Yeah. I wonder if there will be anyone left on this list that you would draft in a Keeping Karlsson league. I guess we'll keep going. So Peltier and Evangelista, you said, have also these plus 3,000 odds. I guess both of those guys are likely to make the team, right? At the very least.
Evangelista is for sure going to make it, right? I mean, he was really good last season, and Nashville, shipped out Duchesne, Johansson. It's like they're going to have a young and probably competitive team. It's going to be interesting. There it seems like a new Nashville Predators. They're going with like skill and younger guys. They got, Parsonen, Novak, Evangelista. They got Glass there, Tomasino. All these guys are going to play a fair amount. And I like that. I like that for Evangelista. I'm not sure. Like, I don't think he's going to be able to do enough to, score more points than like a Shane Wright. I mean, not Shane Wright, Connor Bedard, but he is 21. So he's, several years older. He was, 51 point pace last season in that 24 game abbreviated sample. So I really like Evangelista. He's got the opportunity. He, could earn top power play time. He could earn, second line minutes or more. So you really got to like that. And Peltier, Calgary also seems like they're having a bit of an exodus there. And there's a ton of opportunity, which is, I guess, the bright side, the good way of looking at it. And there's still some decent players there, right? I mean, Calder's there, Lindholm, Huberdeau, Mangiapane, Dubé, Backlund. There's, they're not like, some of those guys aren't amazing, but they're good players. They're good NHLers, and they could help him. So I think Peltier has a decent chance, but I also don't think that he should be this high on the list. So I have both of these guys a bit lower. I mean, Evangelista I have 17th, and then Peltier I have 15th. So I have them kind of both in that mid-teens.
Yeah, Peltier got a decent opportunity last year, right? Like he played 24 games, only 7 points, even though he was getting like some power play time, getting decent time on ISO, but he's young, but now he's already 22. So yeah, it seems like probably he's not someone I'm rushing to grab. I know a lot of people are kind of interested in Jacob Peltier. So we'll obviously see what his role is in training camp. If he gets a spot like on the wing of like a Lindholm or a Kadri, maybe he becomes a little bit interesting. Okay. And then Evangelista, yeah. I mean, I'm excited about watching some of these Preds games. They were fun at the end of last year when like Novak and like you said, all these like rookies were doing exciting things. Okay, so those are our plus 3,000s. I guess now we could move on to even worse odds and see if there's any diamonds in the rough here.
Yeah, I think so. There's definitely some interesting ones. So plus 3,500, we have Simon Edvinsson, defenseman for the Red Wings, and the big bad Dustin Wolf, who's one of my absolute favorite prospects. And he's a goalie for the Flames, for those of you who don't follow it as much. But so first with Edvinsson, I was, I've been a huge fan of Edvinsson for a while. I've been pumping his tires, but what Detroit did, which is kind of similar to Columbus, is they just went out and filled their blue line with a bunch of NHLers, so they committed to Wallman. They got Petrie, they got Gostisbehere, they got Justin Hall. So like, there's not really room for him. Like he could certainly surpass some, he's not surpassing anyone but Hall maybe, but he could do that. So I think Edvinsson might spend a bit more time in the AHL next year, which obviously isn't going to help him win any Calder awards, but he's a really good defenseman and he's certainly NHL ready. He was over a half point per game in the AHL last season. He played 9 NHL games and looked really good at times, looked kind of bad at other times. I think it was Nathan McKinnon who made him look silly, but Nathan McKinnon makes regular NHLers look silly sometimes too. So can't really hold that against him. But yeah, I don't know that Edvinsson is going to have enough of the opportunity. So that's why I have him at 23rd. And then Dustin Wolf, well, they have a couple of, competent goalies. I really like Jacob Markstrom for a bounce back this season. Things just went so sideways in Calgary. And then they got Vladash, however you want to say it. But Wolf has been like quite literally the best minor goalie. Any league he plays in, he's basically won the goalie of the year award the last 4 years. He's just been incredible. He's been in the AHL the last 2 seasons and he's too good for the AHL, but he doesn't really have a spot. So it's possible if there's an injury, maybe Wolf gets an opportunity. So I really like Wolf, but I don't know that he has the opportunity. So I have Wolf ranked 18th right now. So I really like him, but if there was more of an opportunity, I think he has a chance, but it is possible, right? Like he just gets the hot hand and then they ride Wolf, and it's possible that like Levi, if he pushes them into the playoffs, like he's got a chance, like more than some of these other guys, I would say.
Yeah, like obviously it's just like you said, Markstrom is the big obstacle for Dustin Wolf. Definitely, if like Markstrom gets injured, like right away in fantasy, you're grabbing Dustin Wolf. You're not grabbing Vladar thinking like, okay, I'll just, normally you just grab the backup, right? But in this case, no, like Wolf will probably come in and leapfrog Vladar and get a lot of starts. So that's definitely someone you should have your trigger finger on if he doesn't make the team, like at the first sign of a goalie injury over in Calgary. But yeah, otherwise, yeah, Edvinsson and Wolf, yeah, don't seem like guys who are going to get enough opportunity to make a significant impact and worth like drafting in one of your leagues or betting on to win the Calder.
No, but watch list Wolf for sure. And, Edvinsson is possible too if there's enough injuries, but there's enough crowded, space on the blue line between Sider, obviously, and then Goss's Bear, which, both those guys are probably going to run the power play, off and on. And then Jake Wallman got decent power play time. So, unless there's a Columbus situation like last year where everyone gets injured, and even Petrie, right? I mean, Petrie's run power play. So yeah, I don't think there's the opportunity for Edvinsson.
Sorry, I'll just leave an ad break here. All right. Sorry, I'm just gonna. Dina's messaging me. Once. Sorry. Just working out, coordinating some stuff. Baby in the house. You know what it's like, Victor. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So all right. Okay, so I'll jump in. All right, so now we're getting to super long shots, not like these last players haven't been, but yeah, 40-1 odds and beyond. And I'm seeing a name here next on the list that I feel like we've already talked about like the last 2 times you've come on to talk about Calder candidates. So is this finally the year that Marco Rossi, forget about winning the Calder, is he actually going to play enough games to not be on our Calder episode next year?
I think so for the second part of the question. Yeah, I think he does. He if people didn't know, he got super sick with a COVID induced myocarditis, a heart inflammation, and like literally almost died a couple of years ago. And so it took him a long time to come back from that. He was awesome in the AHL the season after that recovery, and was even more awesome this year. He came into the NHL and people were like, oh, he didn't score, he's a bust, he had 1 assist in 19 games. But the thing is, like, he actually generated a lot of pretty good scoring chances, and he was pretty close to league average in terms of defensive hockey. And that was always the rub against him, is he's a 5'9" forward. Is he going to be able to play defensively enough to earn those opportunities offensively? And I think he answered those questions. Like, he answered that he belongs in the NHL, he can hang with the tough competition. So yeah, it seems like he's gonna get that opportunity. Now, is he gonna be like the top line center in Minnesota? That seems unlikely at this point, but he may earn his way up to that, at some point. But right now, it seems like he'll be more of a middle 6 center, or maybe a middle 6 winger. They got Hartman, they got Eriksson Ek, even Gaudreau there, that are pretty decent down the middle, and Johansson can play center. So they got some other options. They don't need to put him there. And it seems like they want him to be a center, but they don't want to rush him into that top line role just yet. So those of us who were hoping that he could be, alongside Boldy or Kaprizov, that seems unlikely at this point, but it still might happen. Like, his trajectory is fine, especially after that heart condition. So he's still great, but it's going to take him a little longer. He actually still looks just like Daniel Briere in the hockey prospecting model, who was a star producer. So I think there's still hope that he's going to be very good, but I don't think it's going to be this year. So that's why I have Rossi down at 19. So not super excited about his potential. And then the other guy that's plus 4,000 is Logan Stankoven. And Logan Stankoven is another short king. He's actually even smaller than Marco Rossi. He's 5'8". He's a Dallas draft pick. He was in the WHL the last few seasons, and he finally is going to graduate. And he couldn't have played in the AHL anyways. And he and the Kamloops Blazers were the Memorial Cup hosts, and he did really well. I mean, he was over 2 points per game in the playoffs. He was almost 2 points per game in the regular season. He was dominant for Canada at the World Juniors, like literally their face-off guru. So Logan Stankoven is awesome. Even though he's small, he's so tenacious and such a he has such a versatile offensive skill set. Like he's not just fast or has quick hands or good shot. He has like a lot of different ways that he can score, and I think that's going to help him translate. The thing is that he's minors exempt, so he can go to the AHL this year, and so he's going to put up a good fight at camp. But I kind of think they're going to not put him on the team. I think they're going to let him transition to professional hockey in the AHL, which is not going to help him win any Calder trophies. So I love Logan Stankoven. If he plays all year, I think he has a really good chance, but I don't think he's going to. So I have him at 27.
Oh, wow. Okay. Like the Stars have a lot of prospects. I've heard you and other prospect guys talk about it. Like there's Stankoven. I know people are also super high on Maverick Bork. Wyatt Johnson, I guess, already played a season last year. Of those three, I think of those with the big three, right? I guess Thomas Harley on defense, people are high on. Like, who's their best prospect at this point in Dallas?
Stankoven.
Oh, okay. There you go.
He's got the biggest upside, but he also has the biggest questions, just in terms of he's smaller. He hasn't played professionally. Bork, it was interesting last year because I thought that because Wyatt Johnson was minors exempt, I thought it was less likely that he would make the team. And it was still really improbable what he did. He was awesome. And Bork, because he could get sent down, I think that also kind of hurt him. So he played in the AHL and he was good, and he definitely has upside. But I think Bork is more of a middle six player. Johnson, we've already seen on the top line and, getting top 6 minutes. So I think he's going to stay there. And then Stankoven, I mean, he could play anywhere. He's a little energizer bunny. So he could end up being more of a checking line kind of guy, but he has so much skill. I think you have to put him on the half wall on the power play. So they're all a little different for sure.
All right. So we'll probably talk about Stankoven again next year. And there won't be a Bedard in the picture. So maybe Stankoven does have decent odds to be a Calder winner in the future.
That'd be fun. He will have a Macklin Celebrini and Cole Iserman problem next year.
You think that's going to be a big problem at this point?
Yeah. Those two guys are going to be really good next year.
Cole Iserman is Steve Yzerman's kid.
It's not spelled the same way, but it does sound the same.
Oh, okay. I don't know. I just listen to your podcast mainly to learn about prospects. So I've heard of Celebrini, and I think that's pretty much it at this point. Okay, so that'll be a fun conversation when the time comes. Okay, so I'm done to keep going as long as you want to go, Victor. So are there any other names on the list that you want to talk about?
Yeah, there's a few more on the odds here at plus 6,000. I'm sure there are other odds that people can find, but the ones that I pulled plus 6,000, there's 4 more, and then we can just talk about my list. But at plus 6,000, there's Olin Zellweger, Ducks defenseman, Tyson Forster, Flyers is forward, Ty Cartier. Oh, sorry, there's 5. I can't count. Ty Cartier, Kraken forward, David Reinbacher, Canadians recent draft pick this year, and Yuri Kulik of the Sabres. And so these guys are all at very different stages of development. I think we can relatively confidently say David Reinbacher, I don't think is going to play in the NHL this year. He could, like he played in the NL last year in the National League in Switzerland and was good, but he needs some AHL time. I think he needs to develop a little bit more. So I don't think they're
said that about
him.
Slavkovsky last year.
No, he definitely should have. I think that was part of the problem. Yeah. Right. Well, yeah, they did play him. So so the Canadians, well, maybe did they learn the lesson? That's the question. Did they learn a lesson? And are they going to start Reinbacher in the AHL? They should. We'll see. So that's an interesting one. And then Zellweger is one of my absolute favorite prospects. He's incredible in terms of his offensive potential. He's really dynamic offensively, and he was literally one of the youngest players that was drafted in his draft year. And so he hasn't been able to play professionally. He's been stuck, quote unquote, in the AHL, and in the WHL, and he's been just absolutely destroying that league. He was at the World Juniors, tearing it up. So Zellweger, you can't really hold it against him that he's been in the AHL and in the WHL. I keep misspeaking. And so you can't hold that against him, but he's been fantastic, and his equivalencies are super high. I mean, he looks like some really high-end defensemen. Daryl Sador is one of them. Provorov is one he looks a little bit like. Maybe that isn't so exciting for some, but he's basically just a few days away from being eligible for the following draft. And if you regress his numbers, they're all like superstar producers. So the question is, will he make the team? And is there an opportunity there for him? I personally think he's way better offensively than Jamie Drysdale. So I think if he makes the team, like there's a pretty decent role for him, and I think he'll get those offensive minutes. He is a little bit smaller, but he's an excellent skater, and he's proven that he can be pretty good defensively, at least at the WHL level. It probably makes more sense to give him some AHL time though, Zellweger. So I'm not sure that he's going to do it, but Elon, how long have we been bored to death by Cam Fowler running the Anaheim Ducks power play?
Okay, but like Fowler actually ended the season like really strong. Brian and I talked about him on
I know.
On the Red Boys episode, and well, Brian like tried to put me in my place. I guess he kind of did. Like I guess it was like really just like a really good month for Fowler, but I don't know. Like anyways, and also the Ducks aren't like running their team for our entertainment, so I wouldn't be surprised if Fowler does it for one more year, especially with his contract and how he ended last season. I think he'll get the first shot, but yeah, at some point, yeah, Zellweger, but there's also another guy, right? Minchukov. Is it
Yeah.
such a sure thing that like who do you think makes the team between those two? I feel like because Minchukov,
Oh,
wasn't he tearing up the OHL?
Zellweger, well, he's a year older, even though he's
Oh, I see.
younger. So yeah, I mean, Minchikov is awesome, but I don't think he's gonna make it just because of his age. So yeah, I don't think that's a significant issue right now, but I
I
think in
see.
the future that's what people are wondering, and this is what I've been asking people on my show too. I personally think that it's Zellweger, and I've been asking Scott Wheeler and Mitch Brown and everyone else that we have on the podcast, and it's interesting. Mitch Brown gave some really good answers in terms of like they're kind of different players, Minchikov and Zellweger. But I think the consensus, and I agree that Zellweger is better, but they're both great. I mean, literally, Zellweger and Minchikov could both be your top D, and that's a great problem to have. It just reminds me of like when the Ducks actually had Pronger and Niedermeyer, right? They're like literally two number one defensemen side by side and just play them, half the game on different pairings. Like that's literally the problem we could be having here. But Minchikov is probably going to be in the AHL. He is a year younger, so it's possible. But I think Zellweger has the inside chance. But most likely, neither one of them are going to play a significant role in the Ducks this year.
All right, so we'll just talk about both of them next year again. Man, it wasn't too long ago when Jamie Drysdale, everyone talked about him as being like the future top power play guy in Anaheim. Now maybe
Yeah.
he'll like never get a chance.
Although, if you remember that year, he was the top offensive defenseman in a very weak draft for offensive defensemen. So, yes, there was some excitement, but it was kind of like he was the best of what was available. And I think a lot of times when you look back at those situations, it's often a bit misplaced, because it's like, yeah, we're excited about this guy. It was kind of like this year, right? This year was not the year to draft defensemen. It was last year. And so, Reinbacher and Simishev, like, were good this year, but I would have them around behind 7 or 8 defensemen from last year, just because there were so many good defensemen last year.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So anyone who bet big on Drysdale in their dynasty leagues a few years back, Victor doesn't think you've been waiting a long time, and you might have missed your window already. So it'll be fun. But Anaheim, yeah, like we just talked about before with like Leo Karlsson, like eventually this team should be good. I feel like I've been saying it for a while, but it's like pretty fun. Like McTavish and Zegras and now Leo Karlsson all like on the offense and like all these great defensemen. I know you've been a fan of Dostal for a
Yeah.
while.
Actually, we should talk about him because, well, let me just mention that I had Zellweger 9th on my list. And so he was right behind Hughes, Jiricek, and Zellweger. And that's just mainly because of opportunity, that I have Clark ahead just because of opportunity. But I do have Lucas Dostal 11th on my list. And I love Lucas Dostal. He's quite literally one of my favorite goalie prospects. I've seen him play live a bunch of times in the AHL, and he's just so controlled in his movements. Like nothing surprises him. The only goals I saw went in on him were, kind of like backdoor tap-ins where the defenseman missed their assignment. And it's like, yeah, well, you can't do everything, right? But he's just so good. And even on this really bad Ducks team, he was decent. The goals against was high, but the save percentage was really good. And that's the main number that you can control as a goalie. So there's a lot of question marks with John Gibson in Anaheim, and I think there's a pretty decent chance that Dostal plays a significant number of games. He played 19 this past season. I think he could play, even more if Gibson ends up getting moved out, which seems so much in the air. But Dostal is the future starter in LA. They actually have two future starters in Anaheim with Dostal and Klang, but Dostal is better and he's farther along. So I definitely like him. And even in a redraft league, like I think it's possible, depending on the depth, but it's possible that Dostal even outplays him. I think they're going to give Gibson games though, just to give him some reps. Obviously he has the contract, but if they do want to move him, then they need to give him games. But there's a pretty decent chance that Dostal ends up, in at least like a timeshare. So maybe you don't draft him, you have your finger on that add button because he could be prominent in Anaheim with all those off games. That's tempting. Yeah.
But they are Anaheim also. That's the downside.
Well, in a points league, in a categories league, probably not.
Yeah, like Dostal did play 19 games last year, 901 save percentage. I'm sure if you looked into it, like you'd tell me he was like above like expected based on the difficulty of his shots. In Anaheim, they're only difficult shots that those goalies face for a while now. Poor John Gibson. I'd be so curious to know how John Gibson's career would have gone if he was with another team for these past 5 years. Because at one point we all thought that Gibson was like the super like high-end goalie, and then just it's been hard for him for sure. But obviously hard to know like whether to blame him or the team around him. Probably a combination. Okay, so was there anyone? I guess you brought up Yuri Kulik as someone in that plus 6,000 list.
Yeah, he was another one. Yeah, I don't know. There's too much to say about Ty Cartier. I mean, he was good in the playoffs, but I don't expect much from him. The other one I'll just mention quickly, Tyson Forster was the other one that we were gonna potentially talk about.
Right. And Dauber is high on Tyson Forster. If you look at the Dauber guide, he's got a high projection for him.
Yeah, I mean, the top 6 in Philadelphia is not set in stone. I mean, we don't know what's happening with Couturier. Maybe he comes back and plays. Tippett was good. Frost is coming along. Konechny's there. But there's a lot of kind of maybes, right? So Forster could be a middle to top 6. And, he's been pretty good in his development. Like he's coming along. So you like to see that. He's played some games in the AHL. I mean, in the NHL already. So I think that there's a decent chance, and he's a pretty high pedigree guy. The thing about him is his development got really messed up because with the OHL shutdown, he had to go to the AHL. And so he did that, but he was really good. And then he kind of went back to the OHL. So he kind of went back and forth for a while. But in his 8 games last season, he had 7 points in the NHL and then 48 and 66 AHL games. So he looks like he's really good. He's got a really good shot. He's definitely a power play kind of guy. So I think that there's a decent chance that Tyson Forster is, rosterable in deeper formats. I know Dauber has him for like about a 60, 65 point pace, somewhere in there. I think that's very reasonable. Kind of just depends on how well the power play clicks in Philly.
Yeah, so Philly's so tricky to predict every year, especially with their coach Tortorella. Like, who knows who he's gonna like and who he's not gonna like. But yeah, definitely someone who could be good. Might be fun to watch in training camp. And then if he's getting a good role, then yeah, why not draft Tyson Forster and see how far he could take you early in the fantasy season.
Yeah, and then you mentioned Kulik. Kulik quite literally had a historic AHL season. Like what he did was just phenomenal. Like I prepped this in another podcast, and I don't remember off the top of my head, but he had like one of the best AHL seasons for a teenager ever. And that says a lot. I mean, not a lot of the CHL guys aren't eligible to do that. So, there were guys like Pasternak and guys like that were able to do that in the AHL at such a young age, but 46 points in 62 games. And he was like one of the main guys on that team, and 11 points in 12 playoff games. He was awesome. It just seemed like every game they won in the playoff was a game winner by Yuri Kulik. Like he was just awesome. The problem though is that Buffalo is really good, as you guys have been talking about. Their players are maturing. Cousins came along, even Peyton Krebs, Middlestat, even Tyson Jost. Like they're stacked. So I don't know that he's going to have an opportunity. Like he might make the team, but he might not. The thing is that he is a good center. So maybe they move Krebs over to the wing or Yost. But even if he's like a bottom 6 guy, I don't think he's going to get a lot of points. So I think Yuri Kulik is amazing, but I don't think he's going to do enough this year to win the Calder. So I have him down at 26. But in terms of like long term upside, yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah, I guess we were talking about Sabres prospects last time you were on. And yeah, you were saying that you have Kulik pretty high up on the list of Sabres, even though they have some big names over there. All right. So then those are all the players that have odds that you found at least. But you still have some other players that you want to tell us about, right?
Yeah. So I'm going to mention the guys that I didn't see odds for and that I have on my list. So those are Joel Hofer, Lucas Dostal, which we already talked about, Brock Faber, Kevin Korchinski, Joseph Wall, Stankoven. I guess they did have odds for that. Coronado, William Eklund, Nick Robertson, Bordeleau, Daniil Tarasov, Alex Holtz, Jesper Wallstedt, Archer Silovs, Minchikov, which we kind of mentioned, Jackson Lacombe, Ridley Grigg, Bobby Brink, and Zachary Bolduc. And I just made a note that Lucas Reichel is, I think, going to have a pretty awesome season, but he's not Calder eligible. So he is not on the list. But yeah, there's a bunch of guys that didn't have good odds that I think, are at least like top 20, 25-ish material.
Okay, well, yeah, that was quite the list you just threw out there. Do you want me to just kind of pick out some names of the ones that I find interesting, or how do you want to do this?
Well, let me start with Brock Faber because I think he's phenomenal, but I don't think that he's going to score enough points to win any awards. Like if you go back and look at if you just Google Brock Faber saves a goal, he literally saved one of the playoff games for the Wild. Like he batted a puck out of midair that was going in the goal as he dove, and it wasn't his defensive assignment that he missed, I should say. Like he was covering for someone else. He came back and he knocked a puck out of midair to save a goal. He's awesome. Like he's just so good. But so if you went by just like impact on the team, Brock Faber should probably get some serious consideration because I think he's going to play a lot for the Wild. He's that good already to be like one of their top defensemen, but I don't know that he's going to run the power play. It probably will be Addison. I mean, I don't know, Spurgeon. So I don't know that Faber is going to get enough points, but he is really, really good and he's going to play a lot. So I just have him 10th on my list, and I just wanted to mention that I think he's awesome, but I also don't know that you're going to like necessarily want to roster him in fantasy, and because he may not have enough of the counting and point stats.
I see. Yeah. So Kalen Addison last year, since you brought him up, I know he's like not a Calder candidate now, but like, how does he compare to a Brock Faber? Because like last year, people were super stoked about Addison, especially when we saw he was going to be getting a lot of top power play opportunity. And then he was getting like healthy scratched a lot, not playing big minutes. Do you think that like going into next season, like is Faber going to play more than Kalen Addison, or do you think Addison grows into like a bigger minute defenseman who's not getting scratched?
I think Faber's definitely going to play more. I mean, if you're a coach and you're looking down your bench and you're seeing, all these great forwards, and you're trying to match up, like you're tapping Brock Faber on the shoulder and telling him to get out there and shut those guys down. You're not tapping Kalen Addison because that's an adventure. He's gotten better, but Kalen Addison still is not, what you necessarily need. It's a specific situation, right? That you want him out there. And it was so frustrating, right? Yeah. Like he's getting points and then he's getting scratched and it's like, what a nightmare. So yeah, I think that Faber is going to play a lot more, but Addison might end up with more points, even if he's getting scratched like a handful of games. So that's the rub. But Addison is just someone that's frustrating. Unless it's a dynasty league, like I don't know that I want to roster Kalen Addison, right? Because like you guys are saying too, like he literally will do nothing except maybe get an assist.
Yeah, like you'll get a power play assist, and that's it. Maybe every couple games. So yeah, no shots, no hits, no blocks. So yeah, kind of boring. But if he gets more ice time, obviously that could change. But sounds like you're saying that the ice time is probably going to go to Brock Faber. Yeah. So I mean, that was a great list. I guess like the Shark. I mean, I guess like the Blackhawks are always interesting, since they have Bedard coming in. It's always fun to kind of speculate. And you mentioned Kevin Korchinski. He was just drafted a couple drafts ago. Is he someone that you think that the Blackhawks are planning on making the team?
It's really hard to say. I think that he developed a lot this year. He doesn't have like size issues or anything. He's big, he's 6'3", he's pretty physical, he skates really well. And the thing is, he played for the Seattle Thunderbirds last year. For those that don't follow that closely, they absolutely rolled the WHL. They were so good. They just destroyed everyone. Didn't win the Memorial Cup though, unfortunately. It came up a little short, but he was on this really good all-star WHL team, right? And so in some ways that was bad for him because he didn't grow in some ways defensively. They gave him all these offensive minutes and prime deployment. That is not how it's going to be in Chicago, right? It's going to be a struggle. So, and because of his age, he doesn't turn 20 until next June. He would have to be in the NHL or in the WHL. So chances are he's going to play 9 games and go back to the dub. So I don't think he has a great chance, but it's also possible that they're just like, stay with the team the whole time. Like let's all grow together. The young guys will all be terrible, but we'll develop. And the nice thing when they have him on the team is they can monitor their development. So I think there's a chance that they keep him up. I don't know that it necessarily makes sense, but at least they can have him work on specific things if they have him with the Blackhawks, as opposed to going back to the dub. It's a little bit harder to control the development, although Seattle will be much worse this year. So he will have to work on, some things, and they can, give him some tips on that. So it's possible, but I don't think that Korchinski, I don't think it's likely he plays this season in Chicago.
I see. They have another rookie defenseman that we just added in our joint dynasty league. I don't think he's a Calder candidate, but Wyatt Kaiser. I just added him. I don't know. I'm excited about Chicago. I just want to get Chicago players and see who's going to get exposure to Bedard, and then we can drop them after that.
He's more likely to play with Seth Jones because he's a lefty and he's not going to score a ton, but he has some pretty decent offense. He's definitely more of a two-way guy, I would say. And so it's possible. I think he's more likely to make the team just because he's played in the NCAA for 3 seasons. And so that's a little bit, has him closer. And he played 9 games in the NHL last season. So I think Wyatt Kaiser, he's, for a dynasty or a keeper league, he's definitely someone that's more interesting to flex up and down from your minors. But I don't think that Kaiser is. I also don't think he's gonna score 40 points or whatever. So maybe by association with Bedard and Seth Jones, he gets 30 or so, 35.
I see. Okay, so in this list, I guess another player that Brian and I have talked about is Joel Hofer, who's like going to make the team in Seattle, gonna make the team in St. Louis. They don't really have anybody else. And so in Binnington, we know is shaky. So I feel like he has just as good an opportunity as some of these other goals we've talked about, like Dostal, to maybe steal start. So he's obviously interesting. I don't know if you have anything new to say about him. And then is there anyone else on I guess Joseph Woll, another goalie, who is going to be backing up Samsonov. So we talked about both of those guys, obviously in our More Goalies Board episode. Anyone else on this list that you made that you think is going to actually make the team? I asked about Korchinski. You said he's going to not make it probably, or not stick with the team. Brock Faber, you think will? Anyone on that list that you think is actually going to make some sort of impact in fantasy next season?
I think Hofer will. I think as we've all talked about, Jordan Binnington has been on a downward spiral. He's been terrible, but he has the contract. I think Hofer might do what Husso did a couple years ago. Prove himself and maybe get a ticket out of town, or maybe he steals some starts, but it's going to be Binnington for the most part. I would imagine they're going to give him all the opportunity with the contract. But I definitely think Hofer is a good stream. And, maybe if there's an injury or if he just goes on a run, I like him. I also like Joseph Woll. I think, they have Martin Jones there. I can't wait for Leafs fans to enjoy the Martin Jones experience. That's going to be a good time, but I really don't think he's going to play that much. They're going to turn the wall when Samsonov gets injured. I'm not saying if, I'm saying when, because that always happens. And he's been inconsistent at times too. So I think Woll's going to play, and he's been pretty decent. So those 2 guys for sure. I think William Eklund is someone who the Sharks are going to be so bad, but they're going to, like what they did last year was basically let's score a lot of points and lose. So that might happen again, even without Erik Karlsson, and Eklund's going to be part of that. And he should be in the NHL. He was really good on a terrible San Jose Barracuda team. So I think that he still has pretty decent upside, maybe 60, 70, he could get there this year. So he might be rosterable. The thing about Eklund though, is he doesn't shoot a ton. So he might be hard to roster if he's not getting those referrals, which he tends not to do.
Right, I see. And even if he's good and getting good deployment, maybe his upside is like what Barabanov did last year, just because how high can you expect a Sharks player to do next year?
I think he's better than that, but he might be equivalent just in terms of what he does. Yes, I agree. And then Coronado is another one who, he played one game in the NHL. He's been awesome at Harvard the last 2 seasons, and it depends on how the deployment goes and what they do. Coronado could see some time. He definitely is NHL ready, but more likely he'll be in the AHL. And then Nick Robertson, we mentioned him already. I mean, it's possible that he is farther along than Matthew Nyes. It's possible that he gets, I'm sure he'll get a look in the second line, and maybe he sticks finally. It seems like he's had a lot of opportunities and hasn't, though. So hard to say about Nick Robertson, Robertson the Lesser, as I've been calling him.
He's had a lot of injuries, though, right? Like maybe he just
Yeah.
needs to get some time healthy, and then he can show what he has, or maybe it'll just never happen.
I mean, he's a small dude, so and he plays really fast. I mean, he's a much faster, better skater than Jason Robertson, but he's also much, much smaller. So he throws his weight around and he gets injured. That's unfortunate. Also, I should mention, since we're talking about Sharks, Thomas Bordeleau is someone who might make the team and make an impact. Unfortunately, though, the Sharks just went out and signed a bunch of like middle to bottom sixers. I don't know why they did that, but so they're pretty full up with roster spots, which is going to make it harder for any of these guys to make an impact. But it's possible that Bordeleau does, and if he does, he could be, middle six center and be on the power play. Yeah.
Sharks, man. Without Erik Karlsson, I just can't imagine this team. Like, that's your team, right? San Jose Sharks.
I mean, I'm not really a Shark. I'm not really any team's fan. I just kind of, talk about everybody.
Yeah. Man,
but I did grow up a Sharks fan. Yeah.
I'm excited to see just what happens. Like, it just seems like such a weird situation with no defensemen that we know of that know how to like run a power play. But I guess there's I guess have I asked about that on the last time you came on, between like Makhamadulin and there's another guy that people at Thrun.
Yeah. And there's Matt Benning. So when I had Shang on, he said he thought Jacob McDonald would be the guy. I just can't imagine. They signed this guy, Jacob McDonald, who I guess has run a power play at some point. I have no idea. I don't think that that's terribly likely, but anyways, that was his answer. The reality is no one knows. And I think that Thrun is a pretty good option. Makhamadulin looked really good in the AHL, and he did run the power play there a little bit, so that's possible. Matt Benning is also someone who has in the past. I know that they asked Jan Ruta, who recently went there, I think in the trade, right? And they're like, "Can you run a power play?" And he's like, "Sure." So it sounds like they have no idea who's going to run it. I think there's some clear answers of who won't. I mean, I don't think it'll be Ferraro or Vlasic. Or Shimmick, but maybe Benning, maybe Makhamadulin or Thrun. I think we also have to entertain the possibility that they run 5 forwards, which would be really fun.
I mean, yeah, entertain me. I'll take it. Jacob McDonald available in our Dynasty League. Victor, should we be rushing to go grab this guy? 101 games played with Colorado, San Jose, and Florida. Only 2 of those games are with Florida. And 19 points. And honestly, I don't think he's ever been mentioned on a Keeping Karlsson episode. This is the first time for Jacob McDonald.
And probably the last. I don't want him.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay, so you brought up Lucas Reichel, saying like he's not eligible, but you just wanted to kind of mention him as like someone who you think is going to have a big season. And yeah, he could line up with Bedard. And so Reichel is definitely someone that I'm interested in as well. I was actually thinking maybe to end the show today, we can talk about some guys who aren't Calder eligible, but like maybe second years, close, that you think are going to have a big season. So maybe like to qualify, it has to be someone that you think is like has like, I don't know, 65 plus upside for a forward. Like, is there, maybe like 50 plus for a defenseman? Like, you know what I'm talking about? Like someone that people find interesting. Is there anyone jumping out at you? I guess Reichel is one that you think like year 2, they can like have a season like that. I threw some names at you before. I don't know if you want me to just like, how about I'll throw out some names, like the ones that came to my head that I'm curious to get your take on, like which one of these. So yeah, Reichel I had on my list. Marchenko in Columbus, also Kent Johnson in Columbus are 2 guys who were rookies last year that I'd be curious to know if you think they're going to have a big jump. Perfetti on Winnipeg. There's McTavish, another Anaheim Duck. Kalen Addison we talked about. I don't think it's going to be him, but you never know. Wyatt Johnston, I guess we talked about. And then there's like some defensemen, right? Owen Power, Jake Sanderson, who just signed that crazy contract, and Cam York, who's not technically his second season, but he's only played like one season's worth of games. I want to throw him in there also, someone who could take over the top power play in Philly next year. Yeah, any names from that list or anyone else you're thinking of like that people should really have on their radar that like they've played a year, weren't super exciting, but you think like it's about to just like go to the next level next season?
Yeah, I think the obvious name is Lucas Reichel because he was really good at the end of last season. He was really good in the AHL. I have to say Lucas Reichel was someone I was definitely wrong about. And in his draft year, I saw him as this like speedy forward, but I didn't see him making a lot of plays at pace. But he really figured out how to adapt the pace, how to shift it, speed up, slow down, and make his opponents kind of miss and second guess. And he has really adapted to the pro game in a way that I didn't see. And I think he's an excellent teammate partner for Bedard. I think he's going to play with him a lot, certainly on the power play, if not at even strength. And I think that he has 65, 70 point upside this season. So yeah, I think Lucas Reichel, especially at the end of your draft, that's actually not something I didn't look at that in terms of where his ADP is, but he's someone who he's going at 211 in the cupful. So yeah, that's a really nice late swing on a player that has 70 point upside.
Plus, also, I keep saying I'm going to do it. I am planning on doing this. I just haven't had a chance yet. But I'm planning to do an episode of Matchup Maximizer before the season. In the next couple of weeks, I'm hoping. I've had a lot of fun people to talk to. Dover, yourself. I got Dom Lucic coming. But I want to do a Matchup Maximizer to talk about the first couple of weeks of the NHL season that could help people in their drafting. But Chicago actually plays like the first 2 days of the season. So like your last pick of your draft, like you might as well just consider that someone you're streaming. So yeah, that's another bonus. Get Reichel, get like a streamer for the first couple days, and then after that you can drop him, or if he's popping off, hold on. So I think even in like a shallower league, there's a good reason to grab Reichel at the end beyond just what Victor's saying about being excited about him and his opportunity. Yeah, I guess another name that jumps out from my list, I'm curious to get your take on, just because I'm trying to think of guys who are going to have like top line opportunities, right? Because that's obviously a big chance. And like Perfetti jumps out to me, like just because Winnipeg, Wheeler's gone and Dubois is gone. Like, do you think Perfetti is like a top line, top power play guy moving forward for the Jets at this point?
Yes, it really depends on what Shifley does to some extent, I think. And when we had our Winnipeg beat writer on, he was talking a lot about that. But also, I know in the Dauber guide, he has, Shifley, Connor, and probably Ehlers, and then a defenseman on the top power play. But the thing is, like, and we've seen this over and over again, Ehlers and does not get top power play time. And that's what he was saying, our guest, is that he likes to play the same position as Shifley. So I think as long as Shifley's there, Ehlers is not going to be on the top power play. So I think Perfetti probably will be, unless they put Velarde on there. So I definitely like Perfetti. He also, like Marco Rossi, proved that he can hang defensively in the NHL. I think Perfetti did an even better job than Rossi as a smaller, highly skilled forward. So I think his upside is pretty decent. He is smaller though and can get injured, so I worry about that a little bit. But he definitely is someone who I think can take a big step, and he probably has like that 70 point upside at least this season. I think he still has point per game upside, long term. So I really like Perfetti. The Jets seem like a bit of a mess just in terms of like who's staying, who's leaving. It's going to be a new crew. Who's their second line center? It might be Perfetti. Is it Gabe Velarde? I don't know. So there's a lot of question marks there. And that's made me a little nervous in drafting some of the Jets. But I think in the later rounds, I would love to take a swing on Perfetti because he might be the top line right wing.
Yeah. So yeah, he's definitely someone I wanted to get your take on. Sounds like you're in agreement that there's a really good opportunity here. And yeah, since I brought him up already, what are your thoughts on Cam York over in Philly? Do you think that he's someone that you've been high on? Like, I know he was like a high pedigree guy, was taken in the first round. He seems like he should be next in line to play the quarterback on Philly's top power play. Is that how you see it?
Yeah, he definitely should be the power play quarterback there. I can't imagine it's anyone else. I mean, I guess who do they still have there? Ristolainen and Sean Walker, Travis Sanheim. I mean, they've tried all these guys. No one has really worked. I think it has to be York, and he's another one who's like a small-ish kind of guy, but he has really shown that he has the defensive chops, and he's always been an offensive contributor. I mean, people kind of forget about him. He was in that part of that 18-19 US NTDP that was ridiculous with, Jack Hughes and Turcotte and Caulfield and all those guys. And York was the one running the power play. And I'm not saying like he made those guys who they were, because obviously those guys are great, but he was there and he was no slouch. He was really good. And he has shown, he captained the US. I think that was the year they won, right? That was the year that US won, was the year Cam York captained them. So he's a really good player. He's been excelling at every level. He was actually really good defensively last year, which I think a lot of people wouldn't realize. So yeah, I definitely think that in terms of like when you're doing your redraft, and it becomes a little sparse, right? With like top power play defensemen, but York is someone that you can get pretty late, and he's probably got 40 to 50 point upside, and that's going to be pretty hard to find. He's going 222 in the last 5 mocks of the Cupful, 236 overall. So yeah, he's definitely going really late. And if you had him as your third or fourth defenseman that was getting top power play time and getting some points, you'd be pretty happy about that.
Yeah, I guess he's a bit of a Kalen Addison with the peripherals, like not as bad, but like he was taking less than a shot per game last year and like less than a hit per game. But obviously also Cam York maybe didn't have the same role. So we'll see if like he can increase that with some more ice time next season. But yeah, that would be like the downside of Cam York. But yeah, definitely some upside there, even just because of the lack of anyone else on Philly. But anyways, Victor, I could keep throwing names at you, as you know, like I do now that we're co-managers. I throw names at you all night long. Is there anyone else you wanted to talk about, or any final predictions about this Calder race before I let you go?
Well, I did want to say that Cam York and Kalen Addison is not really a comparison, because Cam York makes, when you compare the two, it's like Cam York is a stout two-way guy, and Addison has big struggles. So I wouldn't be as worried about rostering York, I guess is what I'm saying there.
I meant it not in terms of the risk of like a scratch. I meant more in terms of just the low peripherals, I guess.
Yes. Okay. That makes sense. Yeah. So Marchenko and Ken Johnson, I'm just a little concerned about Columbus just spreading their offense around. I like both those guys, so I like them late, but I wouldn't reach for either of them because I think they have upside, but just, not reaching for them. Sanderson is not going to get much power play time. He might get second power play time. Owen Power is still going to be stuck down behind Darlene, but if you can get him late, that's great. But yeah, I just, this year, I think if anyone doesn't,
25 events for Wednesday until November
What?
22nd, 2000.
sorry.
Who's this?
That was Siri for some reason. Let me start again. In terms of the Calder race, it's obviously Bedard at the top, but then I think that a goalie has a pretty good shot. Like if any one of these goalies, I think Levi is the front runner, but we also mentioned Hofer or Stahl, Wolf. If any of these guys get on a run, Wall even, he plays for a really good team. It's possible that one of them could steal it. And then I think if it's not them, maybe one of those forwards like Cooley or Fantilli. That's probably it. The other guys are listed more for like interest and reference. I don't think any of them have too big of a chance, realistically.
Yeah, and it doesn't seem like any of those other guys are people you're even too interested in drafting in a one-year league, except for maybe like a Matthew Nyes, who sounds like you were pretty stoked about him. Oh, we talked about Brant Clark as someone. So yeah, there are some fun names. Luke Hughes has been going in drafts. It'll be fun to see what he can do in his first year. Yeah, but behind Hamilton, I'm so excited now. Ever since you got me into Dynasty, now I'm like curious to see how all these rookies are going to do. So it'll be a lot of fun to see how training camp plays out, who makes their teams, who gets cut. Jacob McDonald is the top power play quarterback on San Jose. Lots of interesting things coming up. And yeah, we've got a lot of interesting things coming up in our Keeping Karlsson feed. I'll mention that and then afterwards you can talk to people about what's going on your podcast. But yeah, in Keeping Karlsson, we've got our interview with Damus Chishin coming up in a couple of days. That's an annual favorite where we talk to Dom about all of his projections and his model and all of that. Brian and I will have a good time talking to Dom. Then we still have some of our other like classics that we like to do every year. Finally, Yahoo has cleaned up their positions, at least a little bit. Now it's like playable. Before it was like, we look like Florida had like no wingers at all. But anyways, that's kind of fixed a bit. Anyway, we always do a show where we look at the Yahoo rankings and try to see if there's any value late, because a lot of people that you might be drafting against in your Yahoo leagues, might be just going based on like the default ranking in their draft rooms. So we have that one. Soon we're gonna be able to talk about, training camp and everything going on there. So we've got a lot of plans for our feed. So make sure you're subscribed to Keeping Karlsson to get everything we've got going. And Victor, it's been such a pleasure having you on the show, as always. I guess the next classic thing that we usually do with you is at some point, it's usually like we split it, right? Like one of these drafts where we're gonna take like each get a player per team. So I don't know if maybe we've got to work something out for that for the start of the season. I know we always like to do a mid-year one around the All-Star break. I'm guessing that's the next time that I'll talk to you on this feed, but anytime you reach out, obviously I'd love to have you on. But yeah, why don't you tell people about all the cool stuff you've got going? I guess you already said at the start your new gig, EP Ringside. But aside from that, yeah, anything you want to mention?
Yeah, definitely check out my work. It's going to start coming out in about 10 days. Will be my first series. I'm actually going to first take a look at all the EP Ringside ranks because they rank prospects, and I'm going to talk about the guys that are better in real life than fantasy because it's important to know who you don't want, not always who you do want. So those would be some guys you might want to drop or trade. So check that out. Check out my work there. Fantasy Hockey Life. We're finishing up our team previews, and we're going to have some really cool redraft stuff. We're going to have Clifford on and talk about some redraft stuff and some sleepers. And then we're going to do some in-season content, obviously. And then over at Dobber Prospects, there are rookie tournaments going on. There's one in Buffalo, Vegas, and Traverse City. So we're going to be talking all about the prospects there. And oftentimes prospects that impress there go on to training camp and potentially make the team. So those are interesting ones. For those of you that are into prospects, check out Dobber Prospects Report.
Yeah, I learn a lot, obviously, about prospects from all of your shows. And I've really enjoyed, like I mentioned before, your team interviews over at Fantasy Hockey Life. Just a really good job. And I love how you get into like all the stars, and then you get into the goalies with Cat Silverman and the prospects. It's a really full coverage. So I don't know. Obviously, I'd recommend people just go and listen to all of them if you want to be like super successful in fantasy and just know about everyone. But also, if you have a particular team you're interested in, at least go and listen to your favorite team's beat writer interview. I think, have you gotten them all by now, or do you still have any ones that you need to try to find?
We have not. I think I have found them all, assuming they all follow through. But we have, let's see, we have we recorded 2 that haven't come out yet, and then we have 6 more after that. So it should be, we're wrapping up. We're getting to the end here.
Okay, well, I'll be there listening. And yeah, thanks again for coming on. Like I said, good luck to me on my Dustin Wolf bet. And
Devin Levi. What do you mean, Dustin?
Oh yeah, sorry. Good luck. No, I'll just take it again. Good luck to me on my Devin Levi pick. I hope that'll work out. I wonder now if I'll have a chance to get him in the cupful, or if someone will snipe me just because they know I'm into him. I'm excited to be in a snake draft. I got to say, we're going to be doing these slow drafts, which I haven't been able to do yet in cupful because I've been, not to brag, but I've been in tier 1 doing the auction drafts. But I think it'll be a lot of fun to really get to think about my picks and like decide and come up with tiers. And yeah, everyone who's going to be playing is going to be having a lot of fun, yourself included. And like I said at the top, it's not too late to sign up, and you'll probably get in because we're going to still create a few more leagues, even though we're starting to create the leagues tomorrow. So if you want to play in the couple, just hurry and go become a patron, and then go and register. And it's going to be a really fun season. But okay, with that, Victor, I guess I'll cue the outro music, and I will say once again, thanks everyone for listening. And until the next podcast, okay, I don't know, I didn't have a plan. Usually I throw to Brian. Until you get your next episode, Keeping Karlsson, Fantasy Hockey Life, Dobber Prospects Report. While you're waiting for all that great content to come out, just do your best to make sure that fantasy hockey is for everyone. See ya. All right, sir. Another great show.
Boom.
So fun.
That's right. Yeah, would definitely have to do the mid-season one. This time we're doing it as a snake. Remember, we messed that up last time. That's why
sure.
You won. That's
why
I'm holding to that.
Haven't I won 2 years in a row? But okay, maybe.
Yeah. And you got first pick, I think, both times.
Okay. So should we do any strategizing for our Dynasty League now, since we're on the call? If any of the
what else is there to stretch? I think you've found all.
I mean, at this point, I filled all of our roster spots, and we're gonna have to drop a bunch of people before the season starts. So I guess that'll be the next decision. But yeah, if anyone's curious, we've been busy since Victor and I got together. We traded UPL for Eunice Corpusalo. So now we've got 3 good goalies. We got Vasilevsky, Korpisalo, and Grubauer. Maybe this is an interesting content. Maybe we should just get out of here. But yeah, then I just went on a tear adding free agents, which I'm pretty excited about. I added Severson. And defense in this league seems to be, pretty valuable. It seems like a lot of people are always posting being like they need defense. We added Wallman, Athanasiou, Tyler Johnson. I want to get in on those Chicago players, at least for those first couple games of the season. I don't know. It's fun. It's fun being able to add free agents again. The other league that I'm in, my dynasty league, I'm still waiting for Victor to turn on free agents so that I can play. We're just waiting.
We were just talking about how busy I am. That's the reason. I'm hoping to do it this week. I just haven't had time.
Isn't it just clicking a button? But okay,
but
I don't
have
know.
I have to set it all. I have to do like waivers. It's it's not that hard. I just haven't.
That's fair enough. All right. Well. Anyways, thanks everyone for watching live, and Victor, great talking to you.
You too,
Have a
man.
great
I'll
night.
talk soon. Yep.
See ya. Bye.
Bye.